Hey there, it's Pete Thorn. Welcome to my studio. It's time for another Wednesday Q&A where I answer the questions that you ask me via sending me an email to my Facebook music page here in video form. The first question is from a guy named Vincent, and he wants to know when I'm using Logic, which is my digital audio workstation of choice, what plugin I use to insert impulse responses on channels in Logic. And this would apply to, Pro Tools or any other digital audio workstation that you use. I use a plugin called the MeloMuse IR1A. It's an inexpensive plugin. It's basically an impulse response loader, so you can load, reverb impulse responses or speaker simulation impulse responses, and that's mainly what I use it for. I believe the website is melomuse.com, and I think the plugin costs like $49 or something. It's really inexpensive. The thing I really like about it is that it's simple, and it's got great file management. Really easy to see all your impulse responses in kind of a list in the MeloMuse plugin, and you can just quickly switch from different speaker to different speaker, virtual speaker. And yeah, it works great with the own hammer impulse responses, which are the main ones I use these days all the time. So check out the MeloMuse IR1A. Terrific, really good plugin. Question number 2 comes from Chris I. He wants to know about chord progressions. He's asking, says it's a broad question, but he loves my use of chords, and he can't think of chord progressions like I come up with on his own. Do I use notes from a particular scale and then play the correct chords for each note? Well, having a good basic, theoretical knowledge is definitely a good idea, I think, so that you can understand, what are all the chords that work in a certain key and how they fit together. But, also equally important is just learn a bunch of songs, I think, especially if you're in a rut when it comes to coming up with new chord progressions. Learning Beatles songs is a huge rut buster. The way that those guys put chords together, and the melodies they used as well on top of the chords, just absolutely fascinating. And I swear to God, just go through and learn any Beatles songs, and it'll be just a huge inspiration for you and kind of open up your mind as far as chord progressions go, no matter what style of music you play, I think. So I'll give you an example here. I don't even have this guitar plugged in, but it'll work. Take a song like She Loves You, for instance. You've got 4 chords that sort of form the chorus. It's also the intro of the song, and then they just sing a really simple melody on top of all 4 of those chords. But the way that the melody works on the 4 chords is so interesting to me and so powerful and hooky. And you've heard it a million times, but when you sort of bust it down, it's really interesting. So She Loves You, going from E minor to an A chord, A7, to a C, to a G. And that's the intro. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, 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 yeah. Right? So it's such a cool, amazing, powerful, hooky melody. And the way that the melody sort of feels on top of those 4 chords, it kind of almost has a different emotional impact on each of the chords. So simply by going through and just learning a bunch of Beatles songs, it's kind of like an education in the power of melody and harmony and hooks. So that'd be my main suggestion, is just go through, other artists too, The Who, just great artists that had great melodies and cool songs. Go learn some of that music, and it'll help to kind of expand your mind. Also, just when you're playing and coming up with chord progressions, just kind of move your fingers around. Don't play like the typical chords that you normally would. Move one note within a chord. For example, if you've got like a D chord, and you're playing at the 5th fret, like a standard D sort of bar chord, drop one note in the chord and see what happens. If you move the note on the 3rd string that's at the 7th fret down, okay, it's the D octave note, move that down a half step and see what happens. Okay, oh, now you got a major 7 chord. Okay, drop it one more, and now you've got a dominant 7th, and that's kind of a classic sort of chord progression that you hear all the time, like, right, that kind of thing. So just kind of by moving your fingers around and raising a note here and there, dropping a note in typical chords that you might come up with some really cool sort of voice leading, interesting chord progressions. Question number 3 comes from Andrea Illuminati, and he wants to know how I go about composing the songs that I do in my demo videos for products. He says, they're never 2-chord vamps or standard blues, but rather songs. And do I write them specifically for the videos? and kind of how do I go about doing it, composing them, like any sort of shortcuts and stuff like that. Well, basically the sort of format that I've come up with is I always want to start out my videos with music because I think it's the most interesting thing rather than having me just talk like I am now. But in the demo videos, I like to start out with a song because I figure, hey, if you're only going to watch 45 seconds or 1 minute, if I'm making a demonstration of a pedal or something, at least you're going to walk away from it and say, hey, I heard what that pedal sounded like, as opposed to somebody sort of talking about it and explaining that this is what this knob does and all that kind of thing. You guys can generally, I think, figure that stuff out on your own, and you know what the gain knob on a distortion pedal does. But it's interesting to kind of hear it in action. So that's why I did the format of always starting with a song. But yeah, I kind of have this thing where I want to make it a song. I don't want to like phone it in or just do a standard sort of progression or short clip or anything like that, or just kind of blow licks over top of a 3-chord vamp or anything. I always want to make it musically interesting. I don't know, that's just kind of where I'm coming from. So some of the things that I do to sort of streamline that process are I have templates set up in my digital audio workstation in Logic where I can easily pull up a template, and then it's kind of what a template is it's sort of like an already mapped out session where you've got your basic core drum sounds are set up there. You've got a couple tracks that you can lay guitars down really quick. You've got a bass channel set up with a bass amp simulator already on it and stuff. So it's like an easy blank slate starting point for me to start writing a song. So having templates set up really helps, I find. It just sort of streamlines the process. And beyond that, all I do is sort of plug in the pedal and play it for a bit through what I think would be an appropriate amp, and try and vibe off of it and see what it does. And then I just start sort of writing a song based around that pedal. And if I'm doing for example, like a delay pedal demo, I really want you to hear the sound of the delay, the sound of the repeats and how they sort of tail off and what the delay actually sounds like. So I will write a piece of music tailored around that where there's some space and you can really hear the sound of the delay tailing off and things like that. So I kind of get inspired by the pedal and then try and show it off where it's very obvious what it sounds like, and if it's got things that I perceive as certain strengths or whatever, I really try and sort of promote that in the video or show you what those things are. So that's it, really. And I guess just over doing hundreds and hundreds of these things, I've gotten it down to a relatively streamlined process. Figuring out your workflow in your studio and kind of what works and being able to do things quickly, it's really just a process of trial and error, and figuring out that kind of sometimes less is more, not getting too complicated or too worried about what I consider to sort of be the wrong things. Just having a streamlined workflow in your studio is really important. And yeah, it really comes from just trial and error, writing lots of songs, figuring out if things are taking too long for some reason, and maybe eliminating that and coming up with a different way of doing something that kind of keeps the flow going. Question number 4 comes from Brian Santos. He says that he's been playing guitar for a long time, but he really wants to learn how to play guitar. He says he doesn't know where to start. It sounds like he sort of falls into ruts and patterns that he knows, but then he gets into improv situations and he doesn't like the way that he plays. He says he's terrible in improv situations, and he says he's not sure what keys he's playing in. He's hitting the wrong strings while playing lead. He says he likes to think that he practices, but with no practice regime or guidance, he just ends up noodling or playing things he already knows. Okay, so it sounds to me like I think you sort of answered your own question. Maybe it's the guidance thing. I would probably find a great teacher locally and somebody that you can sit and jam with and that you feel comfortable with, that can see your strengths on the instrument and then some of your weaknesses, and maybe send you down a better path. There's sort of no substitute for that. I took private lessons when I was a kid, and I also went to MI, and I'm largely self-taught, but the private lessons is super helpful, definitely at times. And particularly when you find yourself falling into old ruts and old patterns and habits, there's sort of no substitute for sitting there with somebody else that that you really trust, that can help you out and maybe steer you down a better path. It's kind of it's a super broad question you ask, but I would say, yeah, sort of seek out the guidance of a really good local instructor and try and go once a week for an hour lesson, and do that for a couple months and see if it can't sort of help set you off on a better path. Okay, last question from Conrado Rodriguez. He wants to know what some of my favorite fuzz pedals are, and what fuzz pedals specifically do I recommend that get along well with buffers. And that's a really good question, actually. I enjoy a lot of different types of fuzz tones. One of my favorites is from Clinch FX, which is a really small manufacturer in Australia, and they have this one called the TX Fuzz, which is basically like a really, really great fuzz face. Love that pedal, super cool. But it being a fuzz face, sort of germanium design, doesn't actually get along well with buffers. As far as fuzzes that work really well with buffers, the Sir Rufus is fantastic with buffers. A really, really versatile fuzz. Both the Rufus and Rufus Reloaded, which are a little bit different. So go to the Sir website and check those out. Those are just really terrific, cool sounding fuzz pedals, both of them. And the other one is from Crazy Tube Circuits. It's the Starlight Fuzz. That's a great pedal, and it's a great pedal for people that maybe don't normally gravitate towards fuzz tones, because it almost sort of has a lot in common with a distortion pedal. Especially at lower gain settings, it maybe even sounds more like a distortion, but then you turn up the gain and it's definitely a fuzz. But it's not like a super radical or splatty sounding fuzz, although it will get really gainy. Kind of half distortion, half fuzz almost. So it's a great sort of middle ground or intro to fuzz tones for people that maybe normally aren't accustomed to using a fuzz. But it works really, really good with buffers as well. So I would say that, yeah, Crazy Tube Circuits, Starlight Fuzz, and the Sir Rufus. Roadworthy, super cool modern fuzzes that can also get kind of, throwback 60s and 70s sort of tones, but will work great on a modern pedal board with buffers, or if you're using a wireless system. Okay, that's it for this Wednesday Q&A. Please go to my Facebook page and ask me some more questions, and I'll get to them as soon as I can in one of these videos. And hit subscribe if you haven't. I'd love it if you come back and see me for some more videos real soon. I am Pete Thorn. All right, take care and happy holidays.